This is Reaganism, a podcast dedicated to exploring where the Reagan movement lives today. I'm Roger Zakheim, your host, director of the Ronald Reagan Institute in Washington, D.C.
On this episode of Reaganism, we are joined by Representative Victoria Spartz, a freshman Republican member of Congress that grew up in Ukraine until the age of 22.
Congresswoman Spartz, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, you're a leading voice, a new member of Congress, known to those who follow education and labor policy. You're on the Judiciary Committee, but of late, you have become a leading voice within the U.S. Congress, but actually just on the part of all Americans as we grapple with and witness what's happening with Russia's war on Ukraine. Tell us more about your background and how you've become the voice out of the Congress when it deals with Putin's aggression and war on Ukraine.
Well, thank you for having me. Actually, when I joined Congress, I was asked to be on Foreign Relations Committee, and I said, we have too many domestic issues I have to work on, and we do, because I truly believe if we are not strong domestically, it allows, the whole world and us to be weakened, on the foreign relations area, and this really creates instability around the world. So strength of our country, it's extremely important for the not just for our country, but for everyone else. But I never really thought that, I would have to be dealing with what we're dealing right now. It's a very dangerous situation. And being grown up in Ukraine, actually it was Soviet Union, and it was Soviet-occupied Ukraine, understanding what it is and what this battle is about, and understanding the dynamics of Eastern Europe, it gives me probably more, firsthand experience of understanding that I can share with my colleagues, because this is a big fight. This is something that we haven't experienced since World War II. And this is a battle that Ukrainians have to win, not just for them, but for all of us.
You, of course, left Ukraine in 2000, became a U.S. citizen in 2006, a business leader, academic, adjunct academic, and just a real expert in domestic policy, as you've outlined. But you have this experience and background. As you've been talking to Americans, talking to people in Ukraine, what is the one thing people don't understand about Vladimir Putin that they should understand? And what is something that perhaps we don't understand about the Ukrainian people that we need to understand so we could be better informed about our outlook on this war?
Well, I think, I go back since I'm talking to the Reagan Institute, right? So we talk about, the policies of peace through strength and what's really caused Soviet Union fell apart. And Ronald Reagan was very smart the way how he dealt with international issues, and he showing weakness and being strong allow us to defeat very evil power. Well, Putin is coming from that KGB Soviet Union apparatus, right? He was trained by that. And I think we need to look what we've been doing before and what we've done in 80s and 90s that were much more successful, and what we're doing now. And unfortunately, our country had a lot of weaknesses in leadership, and people like Putin are opportunists. They understand strengths. They understand when America means what we say and what we do, and they understand when to challenge us and taking advantage of a situation. So I think, he's taking advantage of weaknesses of a current administration, and a lot of talk in politics and a lot of drama. And, unfortunately, our country has been observed, with dealing stupid things and weakening the country economically, weakening the country strategically, and really shaking up our institutions and shaking up the security of our country. And then every aggressor out there is looking how they can strike. And, China does one way, Russia does one way, but we had a very failed, and embarrassing withdrawal from Afghanistan. I think, we should have got it out of there a while ago. But if you decide to get out, do it smartly. So we abandoned our NATO allies, and it was embarrassment. So I think Putin understood that this administration is not strong, and let's just, take advantage again. And I think he did another strike. I think he did underestimate the Ukrainian people. I honestly believe that was a grave mistake for him to do something like that, because Ukrainian people, they've been freedom-loving, freedom-fighting people for centuries. I mean, you saw what Stalin tried to do to suppress them, killed millions. Hitler killed millions. So I think this is people, it's in their blood. Freedom is in their blood, and they went through a lot of sufferings. But these people will fight until they win. And I think, that is going to be a big battle. So I think Russia needs to start thinking, what do you want? Where do you want to be? Because I think they're going to fail at the country too. And I think that is a dangerous situation for them too.
Putin, has a Soviet mindset you've shared with us. He sniffs out weakness, and we have to show strength. Putin's underestimated, as you've just outlined, the strength and perseverance of the Ukrainian people. We are witnessing right now so-called negotiations, peace talks in Turkey. What do you think the Zelensky government is expecting to come out of that? In your mind, is there any hope here that Vladimir Putin will truly negotiate some sort of ceasefire, or is this kind of something you have to do, but what matters most is what's going to happen on the battlefield? Give us your take on what's going on right now in Turkey.
Well, I think I'm not sure if, he's still serious about negotiating. I think he's trying to maybe realign his strategy and take a pause to regroup and maybe, take a smaller bite of the apple, at least for the meantime. And I think, that's probably what his thoughts are. But to tell you the truth, if I would be him, I probably wouldn't run the country and destroy my own country, because he has China also on him sitting over there trying to take a move on all of that Siberia that they used to own. But it's very dumb of him to doing what he's doing, on top of the killing so many people and destroying millions of people's lives. But, he needs to start thinking more strategically, because the longer this conflict continues, it's not going to be good for his country too. And I think that's going to really start destroying Russia for him internally. And I think, if he would, rethink his strategy, he probably should try to figure out some consensus with Ukraine. But I just don't think he thinks that way. He has a big ego. And I think he will try to take advantage of the situation. But I think Ukrainians, the longer that prolongs, it's harder for them to come to an agreement, and Ukrainians, send kind of a clear message they're going to be fighting, and I think West, has obligation to help them, to be, deterrent for Putin to go further. And I think West will continue to support them. We probably could be more effective. And hopefully at some point, President Putin will agree to sit down at the table and figure out how to deal with that. I'm just not sure if that moment is there yet. But the more pressure we put, it will get there.
So you noted a couple of things there. The West needs to support. You've been out there talking about what the West needs to do, both from the humanitarian side and the security side, specifically what the United States needs to do, showing more strength, more support. You've traveled to Poland. You've seen the front line. Please address, what do we need to do in terms of supporting the humanitarian crisis that's playing out in Poland and elsewhere in Eastern Europe? And then on the security side, you have this rhetoric from President Biden, but the resources have been a slower go, certainly before the conflict. What else can we do to support Zelensky and the fight on the ground in Ukraine, humanitarian and the military side?
Well, I think we need to have more accountability. Congress just give almost $14 billion. I think we need to push for oversight committee to have hearings now and said, what are you doing? Where are you spending all this money? There is an enormous amount of money from private organizations, from individuals, from governmental organizations, but operational things are not there. I mean, I've been twice in Poland. Polish people do what they can, but I haven't seen the really humanitarian organizations of large scale to be present there on the ground to organize logistics. Everything is sporadic and ad hoc. It causes a lot of problems. People can be in danger from human trafficking, from child trafficking, from really bandits try to destabilize Eastern Europe in general. So it poses a lot of risk. And I haven't seen the scaled up process there. So I think we need to start asking questions. Where will this money going? I mean, we give like $7 billion for humanitarian assistance. Who's doing it? Who's spending that money and where it's spent? We have challenges in the country, in Ukraine. I think there is a different challenge, but we also don't see much, movement in different organizations to have an impact over there. So I think humanitarian crisis has been escalated, but hasn't been properly addressed, and it's over months now, and we're still assessing. On the plight of defensive aid, Ukrainian people will be fighting the fight, and they're not asking us, to come and fight for them. And really, only country can win their freedoms from ground up. You will never be able to win freedoms for any country. We should, forget about these dumb ideas, building nations. Only nations and people of nations can build their own nations. But we can help people that want to fight that, to be able to defend democracy, and be able to defend themselves, to be able to defend their peoples when they're not slaughtered and killed in the cities with no water. No, this is like a genocide, like a terrorism, and we cannot allow one person to hold the whole world hostage. So there are some things we can help them to provide some defensive aid for them to be more effective. And this is the least of cost we can do. And from pragmatic standpoint, they're fighting this war that it doesn't escalate further. And the faster they be able to be successful, the better for the whole world, because it will be destabilizing not just Europe, it will destabilize the whole world soon.
No doubt about it. If we don't hold the line and roll back Russian aggression, then it would only invite more of the same within Europe and perhaps against a NATO ally. Recently, President Zelensky has called for additional support, military support in the form of tanks and aircraft. That is quite distinct from a no-fly zone, which he was advocating earlier, which you have been reported to say, hey, that's not the best course of action to take, because it would invite American on Russian, Russian on American conflict. But in terms of this heavy armor, tanks, or aircraft like the MiG aircraft, is this something you're continuing to press for and push for from your perch in the Congress and your connections now with the Biden administration as you advocate for support of Ukraine?
Well, I think, I don't want to be, here make an assessment of the expert of the military operations. Okay, although I'm telling you, I need to soon learn how to shoot rockets, but I already learned a lot more about rockets than I ever really understood before. So I said, I used to joke that I'm going to want to drink champagne on the beach when I retire, and I'm thinking maybe I need to become an arms dealer. So, so first I need to learn how to shoot all these arms probably so I can be effective one. But joke aside, I think it's important really for us to provide proper equipment that can be effectively utilized by Ukrainians to deter that aggression further, to be able to secure a humanitarian corridor, safe passages, and hold the ground more effectively. And our military commanders need to make that assessment, and administration needs to move on that. And they need to move faster and more effectively, because in any crisis, you have to have the right strategy, speed, and scale. And that's how the crisis is resolved the most effectively. And I think dragging their feet, and they've been doing, and then scramble, and then trying to play and catch up, that's not a very good way to deter further escalation and further aggression. You have to first be able to show the strengths. You also need to beef up our eastern flank to make sure that our NATO allies in Eastern Europe feel comfortable and ensure that we are not going to abandon them. Show it with actions, not the words. Show Russia as a human business, and then, force them to the table to have a serious conversation and offer a way for them to get out of the situation. And while Ukrainians are still willing to have negotiation, because the further continues this conflict, the harder it's going to be for Ukrainians after so many people are going to be died, so many cities and lives destroyed, for them to be able to agree to something. Because, this is serious. These people are very upset. They're distorted. The level of, this is like they're living through hell. Yep. What they're living for, the destruction of the people and their lives and livelihoods. It's unimaginable. Well,
I just to personalize this, we started at the outset of this conversation about your connection to Ukraine, lived there, of course, till 2000, and no doubt still have family and friends there, including what's been reported as your 95-year-old grandmother where I think the building next to where she lives was bombed. I mean, one, how is your grandmother doing that? Just personalize it and takes this to another level. And two, what other family do you have in the area?
Well, I do have some, actually I have two grandmothers, and one of them in the city that been under attack for now almost a month and getting bombed with no electricity and no communication. So we actually don't have communication with her right now. And it's a dire situation. A lot of people, and I know that, my grandma, it's tough. She's 95 years old, but I know there are a lot of people there with little children. My mom's neighbors, she was talking, and they've been hiding with little kids in the basements. And this is not like really even a basement. I mean, these people in a very difficult situation. I talked to people, I just went on the border from Mariupol that, came with women with children, and they made a choice, where they're going to die there or we're going to try to escape. They took a car, and they're lucky that they had a car with a little bit of gas, and they went through, the rubbles, and they was shot but were not killed. Car in front of them, people got killed.
Oh my
I mean, so you take a risk. I mean, people go to the river, try to get water. People don't have food. So, I mean, it's real. The situation there, very, very dire. And we're talking not about 100 people. We're talking hundreds, thousands of people under siege and with no electricity, no water, no appropriate food, and desperately. And then when they try to get out, they get shot. In the city of Chernihiv, they surrounded the city. They blow out all of them bridges. So now they have a pedestrian bridge. And every time somebody tried to get through the bridge, they just kill people. They shoot people. They put a bunch of mines around the city, and watching how people try to run from the city, get blown up on these mines. And if some they don't, they kill them. So this is not a war. This is killing and destroying, people that they cannot suppress.
I mean, it's just massacre and war crimes. We have to wrap up. Only a few minutes left. Normally, our guests on our show share with us their favorite quote from President Reagan. This time, Congressman Spartz, I'm going to share a quote with you, and would love to get your reaction and how it impacts kind of your thinking or reflects your thinking vis-a-vis our discussion about Russia's brutality and war on Ukraine. President Reagan's first inaugural address, he said, "There is no arsenal in the history of the world more formidable than the will and moral courage of free men and women."
Well, I'll tell you one thing, there are a lot of challenges Ukraine have, but I'm telling you, the bravery and courage of Ukrainian people inspired me. And I'm always say, now I'm a spoiled American, live here almost 2 decades. I go to Poland and, and don't even pay attention, as, it hurt my ankle. And I'm like, seriously, I need to toughen up. These people are tough. But, when I talk to these people, it was really amazes me. And, and my mom calls a lot of her friends, and some of them, and it's just a terrible situation. They hide in, they try to, it's getting bombed all the time. And she gets all crying and everything. And they're like, oh, please do not cry. We're not crying here. We just give us guns. We're going to fight and we're going to win. And this is like women of the age of 16, 17, say, just give us guns. We are going to win. We're going to fight. The will, the strength of the people. I think it's so inspiring. It's inspiring for all of us. It's inspiring for me when I go and complain all these terrible things in Congress we argue about. And I'm like, really puts you in perspective how much we sacrificed before and how much people are still sacrifices to have freedoms. And I really hope it's going to be a reminder for our young children, including my children. I told my daughters, I have 2 teenage daughters, I said, for them, it's like, oh my gosh, they've been in these places, they see that. They're like, I said, like, this is a lesson for you young children to see what it takes to be free. We had a lot of our predecessors die for our country to be free. We had a lot of people die in World War II for the peace in the world, and we see right now again where young people are dying, old people are dying. It takes so much. So we have to value it, and we have to be strong, and we cannot get distracted with stupid things and really know what is important and keep our country strong, because when our country is strong, there is a peace around the world. And going around and meeting with a lot of ambassadors and talk to a lot of people, I really understood how important it is, how important our country. It's way more important than a lot of Americans are really realizing. So we better keep our country strong, because when we are strong, everyone else will be strong too.
Congresswoman Spartz, inspiring and moving words. Thank you for your time. We look forward to having you back on the show. Perhaps we hope and pray when Ukraine is free and Russia is rolled back.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Reaganism. New episodes premiere weekly every Monday on YouTube and all podcast streaming platforms. If you like this episode, be sure to let us know and share with a friend.